Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show, by any host, or by any guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before you begin any new diet, exercise, or training program. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
Welcome to Healing Ties on the Whole Care Network. On Healing Ties, we're creating a life to love after caregiving ends by sharing stories and resources and being with awesome people like you. Now that caregiving has ended, let the Healing Ties begin. Here's your host, Chris McClellan, the bow tie guy.
Well, greetings, everyone. It is Chris McClellan, the bow tie guy, for another special, well, they're all special, actually, episode of Healing Ties. And today we are on our episode 4, Amanda, of our Candid Conversations About Care. It's great to see you again.
It's great to see you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so today we're going to talk about long-term care planning. It's not TLC, but it should be TLC.
It's LTC and LTSS, Long-Term Support Services. And this subject is so crucial for people as they look forward to their life and as they look forward to the life of people they love. Because the numbers today are that 70% of people over the age of 65 will require LTC, long-term care, at some point. And there are a lot of myths and misconceptions about what pays and does not pay for long-term care and long-term support services. And so, as a caregiver advocate, it's a part of my job to get people thinking and talking about this. And we just were discussing the concept of a team. Who do you have on your team as a caregiver and as you're planning to caregive? And financial planners and advisors are a critical part of your team. And so we've brought Christina Pinto here today. Christina and I met at the Florida Caregivers Conference in November. And she is both a certified financial planner and a family caregiver. And so I think that her presence here today is so welcome because she can relate on both sides of the experience. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Amanda, for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, it's great to have you here for a number of reasons. One, obviously, your experience as a family caregiver and how that can play into impact on people who make decisions in and around long-term care. But can you tell our listeners really what entails long-term care?
So, Chris, long-term care planning is not very popular, I have to say. It's not that people are not thinking about it, it's just they don't want to think about it, right? It's not a fun subject. So when we sit down with clients and we're looking at, their hot buttons, right? College planning, retirement planning, God forbid something happens, we always want to discuss how do we continue that life that they're living today with life insurance and other vehicles. I bring up the long-term care event happening because, as you said, I'm personally dealing with it with my 89-year-old mother. And so I can speak to how that impacts her, myself, those around me, and we look at, okay, this is a great retirement picture, but Chris, let me ask you, if you had a long-term care event for yourself or your loved one, which of these accounts is earmarked for that? Because that's going to impact that trip to Hawaii or Bora Bora. And so we're looking, that is a crucial part of any plan.
Boy, that four-letter word keeps coming up, Amanda.
Bora Bora?
that too! You got me good on that one. But no, this is another four-letter word.
Okay.
Plan.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And I think what's been resonating through our podcast series here is not only the need to have a plan, oftentimes the lack of plans that are in place.
Right, and what you're leaving up to chance by not having a plan. And I don't want to take your line, but I loved what you said when we were talking earlier, Christina, which was if you don't allocate some assets for this, you are allocating all of your assets for this. Did I get that right?
It.
Okay. It's not mine, it's hers, but I loved it, you know? Yes. And that's true. So could you tell us a little bit about your personal caregiving experience with your mom and how long-term care planning played into that?
Yes, and I'll start by saying, in our culture, that doesn't exist. So everyone moves in with everyone, and you're supposed to just help them because that's just the way it is. And so being in the business, being a planner, I started talking to her when she was in her 70s. So she was a little bit later than normally we talk to clients, and just didn't understand it, didn't believe it, didn't get it. Every month the bill came, every month she wanted to cancel it or she'd stop speaking to me. So I finally said, listen, first of all, you can't cancel it. Second of all, if you do, that's fine. Stop speaking to me, but we are keeping this. So, one of the things I always told her after I explained everything is, Mom, I love you. And no matter what, you're going to be taken care of. So that's not the problem here. The problem here is getting reimbursed for that care, the financial part of the long-term care events that happen. And I want to make sure that I'm okay because you're going to be okay. I'm here. I love you. You'll be fine. Mm-hmm. So after a while, she finally gave up, and I was glad that, she did not cancel it because today we are taking advantage of that being in place, and it allows me to continue my life somewhat in a normal fashion.
Right. You're not sinking your own ship, like we said when my husband Ryan was here on the last episode, to take care of somebody you love. And many of us will do that and gladly do it. But if it doesn't have to be, I'm sure we would prefer the alternative outcome.
Well, sinking it less, right? Because not knowing my mom, you'll need 8 bottles of wine, if I can say that, to get through it. But
is that what's in your bag?
Yes.
You got wine. Great.
But we tried the assisted living for a while, and that did not work. I always tell my clients, if it doesn't solve all of it, because we have no idea what long-term care costs are going to be, we have no idea when it's going to happen, if it's going to happen, it's a big unknown, right? My goal is to help them solve as much of it as possible, but what I always say is something is better than nothing. So for your example, if I have to look at my own finances for a portion of that assisted living facility, it's a lot easier to come up with $1,400, $1,500 than it is to come up with $5,300. Right. So to your point, absolutely, I think that's critical when that's what I try to stop, is those folks from dipping in their own finances, like you had mentioned.
Right.
Your husband.
And the numbers are, truly staggering for what long-term care costs median across our country, which is a nursing home is $92,000 a year. Assisted living facility, $45,000. Adult day services, $20,000, and a home health aide at 10 hours a day is $60,000 a year. I presently do not have that kind of cash on hand. I would like to, but that's not our situation, and many of our situations are not capable of withstanding that kind of outlay. So could we talk a little bit about what long-term care services are?
Sure, and I'll tell you what I use for my clients is that think about getting up in the morning and what you have to do to leave your house. And I'll technically tell you what it means. But if you want to think about that makes it a little easier to say, okay, am I in the need of care? You get up in the morning, you go to the bathroom, you get dressed, you eat, etc. If you need help doing 2 of those 6 what they call daily living activities, bathing, continence, transferring, toileting, dressing, eating, then you would qualify for long-term care. It would become a long-term care event. Now, it can't be a short term. It has to be that you would need that for 90 days or longer. Or the flip side of that, it can be a cognitive memory loss to where you should not be alone. You may be danger to yourself. The microwave gets, you put something in the microwave and you put too much time, or you burn the oven, or you forget to take your medications, or you take too many medications. So it's not what I think people think about it as a nursing home. That's all they think about. And it's really, you don't normally go from being 100% fine to checking into a nursing home. There's a lot of time before that you may still need assistance, but you're not at that level.
That's
if
right.
that makes sense.
It does. And aging in place is so important to the baby boomer generation. And who doesn't want to live out all of their days in the comfort of their home? And if we can provide home services that allow people to do this, even if they do need assistance with activities of daily living, then that is preferable, I think, for most of us. Yeah.
And Amanda, I think I've learned, I learned a few things with my mom's journey, but one of the things that I've learned and I think transfers back to my professional world is I'm a big believer in personalities. Some personalities, I have clients that say absolutely not. And true, to your point, yes, most people do prefer to age in place. In fact, I would say 70% or more of the long-term care plans today that are paying claims are for care at home, especially if there's a couple. But sometimes folks like myself, I picture myself in an assisted living, running the bingo or creating something and being in charge of something, but that's my personality. When my mom was in the assisted living, she wouldn't leave her room to go to the dining room. So she prefers having that one-on-one care at home, but they're home together all day long. And so I've learned that over time that for her, that was a better situation. But what happens is it's a lot more expensive.
It is. And, to your point, the prevention of social isolation is one of the biggest benefits of being in an assisted living facility or long-term care facility. So it is very personality based and it's situation specific.
It is.
And circumstances are not predictable. And at some point, they are going to change. That is the one certainty that we do have, is that things won't stay the same. How do you go about preparing your clients to plan for long-term care?
Well, I think back to my story, it's from the heart. I'm living, breathing this every day. And so I share my experiences, and we talk a little bit about their parents, their loved ones. Sometimes it's a child. Sometimes, and speaking of children, people think about this as an aging problem, and it really isn't. I mean, unfortunately, it can be any three of us. We can be in an accident and have a situation where we're not able to do those two of those 6 daily living activities, and now all of a sudden we need care, and we're going to need care for a long time. So when I talk to parents about my situation and my personal experience, I incorporate those things that I've been through and the importance of planning, and I always tell them, this isn't for you. If you have kids, I make sure they have daughters, nothing against men, but 60% or more of caregivers are women. And so when we talk about their kids, and I really focus it on how does this impact your family? Let's start looking at your retirement. Let's start looking at your plan, and how are we going to address that gap? And it's really a retirement gap. So I approach it a little differently in that it's not really long-term care expense. It's really how do we make up that gap in your income when you are retired or need care that isn't there today to pay for those expenses you just mentioned. Almost $100,000 for nursing home, $60,000, and that's not round the clock. That's 10 hours a day. So now add to that your utilities, your food, your condo or home.
Right.
So none of that goes away. You're just bringing in more expense. And then we talk about different ways, whether it's self-funding or an insurance policy to help them leverage those dollars today to pay for care in the future, and just different ideas and different services that we can provide to help them. But it really goes back to the personalized and back to the family.
Okay.
Not necessarily the numbers.
Right. And, that's been a theme across a few of our episodes now, that there really aren't one-size-fits-all solutions. No. And that's why, you can't self-educate as effectively as utilizing somebody who's a professional who can lay out all of the options and the results of those options and how they would apply to you. You know, we're reticent to use the term expert, but we do like the term professional around here, and professionals as part of your team are a big part. So can we talk about some of those tools that you were mentioning? So we've talked about that you do asset-based planning. Can you tell us about that?
Right.
And insurance options that are available, because one thing that we haven't mentioned background-wise is the care gap, and that's there will simply not be enough caregivers to the people who require care by, I think 2 decades from now, 2050. So we need to plan for ourselves, and for people who don't have large families with many willing members to step in and, take those roles. We were talking about, there's a beautiful article, an essay in the New York Times a few weeks ago about planning from a non-parent's perspective when you don't have the daughter who's willing to, do everything for you, much like you are experiencing with your mom.
I told my mom that this morning.
You do anything for her, right? How do we utilize these tools, and what are they?
Well, and Amanda, I think what happens, the word insurance is just one of those words, right?
Right.
Yeah.
No one likes it unless you utilize it, unless you're that widow, or unless you're that spouse, unless you're that child. So
right, and then you love it.
Then you love it. We've never seen a widow that had, their spouse had too much life insurance. I focus more on the planning. So when we sit down, if they have the means to self-fund, I explain it. I look at the costs. I look at their assets, and I educate them. But I also go back to the emotional side, because I think that's very important. And I tell them, I said, this is how it looks. But now let's talk about, even if you can and you have the ability to self-fund, why, if we can leverage, if we can take X number of dollars today and create this pool of either 6, 7 years, and some companies even provide lifetime, why wouldn't you do that? Now you're leaving your inheritance to your kids and not using that for care if you need to. But I think one of the very, very large misconceptions, even about insurance, but even with those folks that are very much in this subject, daily living it, night and day, they don't really know the differences. And that's one of my biggest goals, is educating folks on what is long-term care insurance.
Right.
And the reason I say that is traditional insurance, my mom has a policy that's her traditional policy, and believe me, I am very lucky that she has it, and it's paying, and it's reimbursing us for care today. But those policies, unfortunately, long story short, companies just did not charge enough for the premiums, and did not expect people would live as long as they're living and would be on claim as long. The average claim is 3 to 5 years. I was told I was crazy because I bought a lifetime policy. My grandmother was 96 when she passed. My other grandmother was 96 as well. And so my thought was, okay, we have this great policy. It's reimbursing us for care. I'm used to that reimbursement. And now, all of a sudden, it ends and she's alive. So I bought a lifetime policy for her. Now, she's using it. It's great. Traditional policies today, and you'll run into folks if you haven't experienced it yourself, premiums were not guaranteed. So the company has to apply to the state. It's not that easy for them to increase premiums, but it has been happening more and more. And if they justify it, the state will approve it. We've seen 30, 40, up to 70% increases.
Wow.
Now think about this. You've been paying this premium. When you actually go to use it, either you're going to drop the policy because you can't afford it, or it's going to just be astronomically expensive. So they are still available. Very few companies are still offering those policies. I don't like them for that reason. I don't like sitting with a client not knowing what they're going to be paying when the time comes that they actually are in retirement. Asset-based insurance policies are very different in that you basically are purchasing a life insurance policy that is going to either advance as a death benefit or it's going to advance in long-term care claim.
We're using these words, and we're all intimately familiar in this room with these terms, either professionally or because we've had to deal with it in our own families. I like to always think of Denzel Washington in the movie Philadelphia. Explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old. So a few of the terms we're using, could you break it down for someone who's just never touched this stuff before? They're walking in as a totally blank slate.
Sure. And so choices are paying for care in the future. Mm-hmm. And again, going back to your statistic, 70% of us will need care. So it wasn't like in the past that most people thought that wasn't going to be them. As longevity kicks in and everything else, we're living longer and we're going to be living with ailments that we will need care. So what I talk to clients in simple words is, would you rather taking $1 today and multiplying that $1 to make it a much larger pool of money, if you would, to help you reimburse you for care? So when the time comes, and remember, it doesn't have to be at age 80 or 83. It can be at age 50. It can be at any age that you need care. Now, you don't have to dip into your retirement assets, your savings account, your checking account, to pay for this care. There is a resource there that you have basically paid for in advance, if you would, and sometimes you just pay for it as you go to create that pool of long-term care reimbursement dollars. Does that make sense? So now it's more of leveraging. And for those folks that maybe what I call is repositioning, you may have a money market account or you may have a savings account that's really it's not earmarked for anything. It doesn't really have a purpose. Now we can actually move that over and prepay your cost of care. Okay. Other ways to pay for it, still that ongoing monthly premium. Biggest huge difference is any payment that you make, whether it's a lump sum, it is guaranteed. Those payments are not going to go up. You can sleep at night comfortably knowing that your policy is in place. And my thing is, something is better than nothing. So it doesn't have to cover everything, but it can cover some of it. It's going to help your daughter, that family member that's coming in to help you.
Right. Well, thank you for that. And we've talked a little bit, and I really want to bring it back around to this, having the conversation. How do you start the conversation with your loved ones?
So it's not easy. My assistant actually talks about this at Thanksgiving with her family.
I told people to do that. Have you done your end of life planning? Please pass the mashed potatoes. But it worked. Everyone's together, and it's a sentimental time, and people remember ones who they've loved and lost in the past, and reflection on family difficulties. It's a good time to do it because they're maybe more open to it.
Well, everyone's there. It also gives you an opportunity to kind of check on mom and dad, right? You're
see how they do.
Are the bills stacked up? Are, things aren't as clean around the house? Or, lawn isn't being taken care of? Because you don't know being far away. And so I think there's 3 sets of conversation, right? You have your spouse and yourself. You have your parents, and you have your kids. So with your, my thing with your parents, your kids, or your spouse, all 3 of them are really falling under the same, do it while you're healthy, you're of sound mind, and you have time on your side. Because the minute someone falls or something happens, then it becomes a crisis, and then you don't have time to visit that assisted living, or you don't have time to find out which of my children is going to be the one that I can rely on, or how those family dynamics are going to work. So
and a lot of conflict happens there.
A ton of conflict. And we actually have sample conversations that we share with our clients, whether it's divorced parents, now you're getting married, you have kids from different families, different spouses, etc.
I'd love to see those.
And it's interesting because it's the parents talking to the children. And a lot of it has been, and we do postings on LinkedIn that share these conversations, and the kids sitting down with the parents over Thanksgiving saying, Mom and Dad, have you thought about what would happen if you fell or if you had a stroke? And oh no, don't worry, we're fine.
Never going to happen.
It's
all taken care of.
It's all taken care of. And it isn't. I would encourage people to go and find you on LinkedIn, Christina Pinto, to be able to access some of that. And then a book that I recommend to people when I'm dealing with my clients as well is similar, giving you scripts and potential responses and how to deal with them is... It doesn't just apply to seniors, but the book is called How to Say It to Seniors, and it addresses a lot of these issues that come up with aging or illness and how very well-meaning and loving family members and partners can get the ball rolling and deal with when you end up with the it's all taken care of conversation.
It is, to me, coming back to this whole experience of caregiving. I'm not sure if we've shared this before, Christina, but I look at this whole big sphere of caregiving now through the lens of leadership and communication. It's the caregivers learning how to communicate not only with their care partners, but the professionals on their care team, and it's also the professionals in return, whether it's doctors, attorneys, lawyers, financial planners, clergy, social worker, whoever, all of them, listening. Listening. That's a tool in communication that is not often
not used,
and it really comes down to me. It comes down to leadership and communication.
Absolutely, because my dad passed away. It'll be 18 years this August. He had a stroke at his business overnight. Boom, he went from speaking to not speaking and lived that way 5 years. And guess what? Whatever we didn't know, he couldn't write either. We did not know.
Did not know.
So I didn't know a lot of things that he would want us to do and not do in his care and et cetera. He couldn't communicate that to us, and that's not something we talked about. So, I'm doing a better job with my mom in trying to find out what exactly, well, she tells me, I don't even have to ask, but, with my clients, I said, sit down with your kids, and I even encouraged my younger clients, sit down with your parents. Oh, it's taken care of. Okay, make me the bad guy, because it's taken care of can mean they have one share of stock or they have really the means to take care of it. And that's going to impact you. So all of a sudden now, like I think you mentioned earlier, Amanda, they're going to dip in their own retirement funds or their own assets. And their life is going to change completely because they're going to have to help the parents, because that's what we do.
That's right.
And so I think when you have examples of conversations, we do post a lot of the videos that are common just over the kitchen counter conversations. I think when the kids start asking the parents and they're serious about it, I think they listen. And with parents, I think they bring me in sometimes, and we'll go to lunch, and I'll be the bad guy.
Right. I volunteer to be the bad guy, too. Blame Amanda. And I say, just say the lawyer told you. And it works. And, one thing that we've touched on today, and I feel like it bears a mention, is a lot of what we inherit from the generations that come before us may be belief systems that really aren't ours, but we want to be respectful of them. And one of those is we take care of each other. We take care of our family. These matters are private. And with what we are facing as a country, with the care gap, and with that most people do not have the money to self-fund, that you have to bring it outside of those very small inner circles and rely on others and ask for help and make it's not a public conversation when you're talking to a lawyer. We have confidentiality. I don't see you in the grocery store and, tell your neighbors what's going on with you. I can't ethically. You as a financial planner, these are really private conversations, but what we have to do is keep dispelling these myths and misconceptions, and you are taking care of your own, and you are taking care of each other by getting them the best care possible and by planning for them. We just need to get to a point where we can express that adequately and get the people we love to believe it.
Well, absolutely, Amanda, because one of my other one-liners is, I want to be my mom's companion, not her caregiver. And technically I'm her caregiver, but because of her policy, because of her planning, because of her finally saying yes, we have reimbursed care, and she is there 10 hours a day, and I am able to somewhat have some normalcy to my life and work and play and still be there in the evenings to help her,
and just be her daughter.
Just be her daughter, which that is the part, back to your original question, is I think that's what I bring to the table to my clients. I'm not your typical advisor that just talks about money.
You're living it.
I'm living it. So I'm going to talk more about the emotional and about their kids and show them how it will impact them.
And that's why we're doing these podcasts, not only to share information, but to share stories. So, Christina, thank you for joining the conversation today.
Absolutely.
So let our listeners know how they might be able to contact you.
Okay, so as Amanda said, we are posting on LinkedIn regularly, so conversation starters are on there. Christina Pinto. Also, my firm is MPC Wealth Management, spelled out Marino, Peelan, Pinto, and Clark. And you can find us, our website is currently being revamped, so pardon our construction, but it's www.mpcfinancialplanning.com. And of course, the good old phone number, because no one uses phones anymore, but I do like conversation. It's 407-246-1515. And you can all reach me there, and my goal is to be a resource and to share my journey in hopes to help others maybe make fewer mistakes, but I think we're all going to make some mistakes along the way. But thank you all for having me.
Well, thank you for sharing your story. And I think, Amanda, there's a continuing theme that seems to be coming along as we move through our series of podcasts, and it's that four-letter word, plan. Bora. And that's where we're going after the sixth podcast. But it's about planning.
It is about planning.
And no matter what field that we're touching during our podcasting, whether it's advanced directives, long-term care planning, finances, it's about having a plan and being proactive instead of reactive.
That's right. And there are things we can do when you failed to plan. Don't just say, okay, well, it's going down. There are things we can do to help at that point. But a plan is essential, whether you're 18 years old or 80 years old. It's not too late or too early. And I think, that theme is really emerging across. And
I think this is something you wrote. You'll never be as healthy or as young as you are today. So don't wait, and let me help you start the conversation. That was Christina. Okay, well, I think we had a repeat there, so that's okay. Amanda, let our listeners know how they can contact you.
I'm Amanda Singleton. I own Singleton Legal, located in St. Petersburg, Florida. You can find me online at www.singletonlegal.com. I'm also on Twitter and Facebook as the Caregiver Lawyer at Singleton Legal.
Okay, well, that does it for our fourth episode of our podcast series. Nice. We're moving along, Amanda.
And next we'll be talking about navigating the healthcare system.
Oh, boy. You need a plan there. Okay, well, that does it for this episode of Healing Ties. I'm Chris McClellan, the Bowtie Guy. I'm creating a life to love after caregiving ends through radio, writing, travel, advocacy, and being with awesome people like Amanda and Christina. Healing Ties is a part of the Whole Care Network. Check us out online at wholecarenetwork.com. We'll see you for another episode, our fifth episode. Fifth episode next week. Navigating Healthcare.
Take care. Bye-bye.